Welcome. You are tuned into today's author. My name is Kevin Tacci, and I will be your host for this segment. And the idea of our conversation today is to introduce you to new authors, writers, share some of their craft and some of the stories they tell, and some of the information they share. Today, we are privileged to be speaking with David Daniel. He is the author of Beach Town Stories. Uh, David, thank you for joining us, and tell the folks who are tuning in a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. I grew up on the South Shore back in the day. Just thinking of back in the day today because I heard Jimmy Buffett has died, and not that I was ever a whole-scale parrot head, but I certainly remember that vibe that was part of that, and that's kind of the way I associate having grown up on the South Shore. Sometimes think it was the South Shore of heaven. That's an exaggeration. But yeah, so I'm a writer. I've been working at the craft for many, many years. I've published more than a dozen novels and a number of collections of short stories. And it's something I work at day by day. I'm a Weymouth guy, basically, originally.
Tell us about some of your background as far as your life and where it has taken you, and how some of that may have played a role in Beach Town Stories.
You bet. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that comes through in my fiction has evolved out of my life experiences. A very early job I had was working at Harvard Medical School in the neuropathology lab. I think back in those days, I kind of was thinking maybe medicine might be a field I wanted to pursue. But that was a very rich experience. I sometimes say it was brain slicing, which literally it was, as a lab tech on a microtoll machine, sectioning brains that would be studied by the various doctors. But over the years, I've had many, many jobs. I did attend college on the South Shore at Eastern Nazarene College in Quincy, went on to the University of Maine, later at the University of Oregon. So I bounced around a bit, got drafted in the Army in the late 60s into the early 70s, and had some interesting experiences there as a journalist. And subsequent to that, I have been, I guess you'd say, an academic for many years. I taught at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell, and Newbury College in Brookline for many years. And kind of the latter part of my teaching career was at a charter school for at-risk students, high school students in Lowell, Massachusetts. And so at present, I live up in the Merrimack Valley in Westford, Mass.
Let's talk a little bit about the idea, the inspiration in regards to writing this book, because it isn't just a book about one individual, but it's a series of stories. Is that accurate?
Sure. It is. It's a collection of stories that are linked, I guess, by the common denominator of time and place. The place being a fictional version of a town. I call it Weybridge. I name some of the surrounding communities. Hingham becomes Bingham, no imagination there. Quincy is Adams Point. And it gives a feel. Braintree is Raintree. So a lot of it has evolved from just those early experiences of growing up in a place that I consider to be a really blessed place. And what's interesting is that these stories were not written with the idea of becoming a book. They were written over a period of both, I would say, several decades, individually, most published in magazines, journals. But it came to me within the last handful of years that it might be nice to kind of go back, look at those stories, pull some of them together, and see if there might be a collection of stories there. So that's how they came together. And then I sequenced them. Basically, the book is divided into two sections, summer and other seasons. And so they are all, I guess, love letters to a nostalgic past in some ways.
If you were, so what goes into writing short stories for you? And is it something that, it's a whim that comes to you and you write? Or is it more so that you have a process that you go through when you're going to write a story and have all the particulars before you put it together?
Yeah, I mean, they do kind of evolve, but the ideas come very individually. For example, one of the things that informs a lot of the beach town stories has to do with uh, clam digging, which was one of the things that on my end of town in North Weymouth, which is really the only part that's on the ocean, was something that a lot of us did when we were young, commercial clam digging. It was always hard work. It was always fun. And it was cash money. Not a lot, but it was cash. And so, there's that. There's the idea of the role that cars played. Some kids had cars. I didn't until much later, but that was part of the culture. Cruising, Nantasket Beach, along the South Shore, Duxbury, all of those places were part of it. And so I guess the ideas come individually. And the thing that's interesting about sort of autobiographical storytelling is that it's really reimagining memory. Memory is obviously not what actually occurs, but it's kind of our impression of what happened. And then you gather together details that can be very precise. You equate them with the emotions one was feeling at the time, drive-in theaters, miniature golf, young romance, all of that stuff. And then, of course, you can get over into the sort of darker palette of emotions as time goes along, the feeling that this once innocent, ideal place, there was darkness lurking at the edges as well. And then you get into all of the sort of dislocations that occurred in the 60s and eventually aging and, illness, death. There's the whole palette of things that sort of figure into the stories. But they're all kind of imagined one by one. And then after the fact, I found that there were ways that they really did tie together as a whole. And although it's specific to this place, they're universal experiences. They're things that no matter where we grew up, how we grew up, when we grew up, these were things that we would have felt and experienced.
If you would give us a sampling of some of the individuals who are in some of your short stories, maybe a couple of your favorite creations that you had a chance to kind of build a story around and tell the viewer, the reader.
Yeah, sure. So this is the book. I mean, I don't know if that shows up, but if I just give a quick scan at the table of contents, there's a story, a very early story called Aristotelian Nights, which is, those nights borrowing a friend's car that happened to be a convertible, cruising along by the old Paragon Park, and the emotions that come. There's a story called Car Wash Dreams, which kind of deals with how small a town can feel. And then you start to get a little older and you begin to wonder, is this place nice as it is? Is it too small? Is it going to be too confining to a personality? And then there's that desire to graduate high school and get on to a bigger world. There's a story in here called September Song, which gets to the idea of that there are darkness that occurs even in the most tranquil of towns. And I guess I'll just maybe cite one more, which is called Runes, which is a longer story, almost a novella, which kind of looks at a dark, almost Twilight Zone-ish quality about this small town. So it's a mixed bag of things. And one of the quotes that I use as a lot of epigraph on the second section is from E.B. White's Charlotte's Web. And I forget exactly how it goes, but he talks about how that even the crickets felt a particular need to warn people that summer does not last forever. And I think of that this time of the year. I think of Shakespeare's line, summer's lease hath all too short a date. here it is, Labor Day weekend, 2023, and there's a feeling, still summer, but summer's gone, and at the nights, this, Kevin, you're a social guy, the crickets are singing with this particular poignancy that reminds us that time is moving on.
So I would ask, is this your first book, or is this first of many that you've written?
Oh yeah, this is probably the 15th or so. I'll just show this book, White Rabbit, was a novel about the 1960s. And then this particular one, Reunion, is another one set in the fictional town of Weybridge, Massachusetts. So yeah, I've been at it. I think I published my first novel in the about 1984 or so, and was on a roll for a while, publishing about a book a year. That pace has slowed down, markets have slowed down, but I'm still at it pretty much every day, writing stories.
So where does Beachtown Stories rank amongst all the books that you have written? Is it special unto itself?
That's a good question. I mean, they're all special to me. What I like about it is that it's kind of a late life work, pulling together works that were written over a span of, the earliest stories in this collection probably were written in the late 70s, 80s. Others were written much more currently than that. And as we're speaking, one of the stories I've got working lately, been putting a lot of time in, is starting to morph into a bigger story. It's about 20,000 words now, but it again is going to be a story that involves clam digging on the South Shore, and becomes a kind of revenge story. So I'm still working on those.
How do you feel, David, that you have evolved as a writer here on your 15th book?
It is one of those things that, learning the craft, and I started relatively early. I mean, when I was in high school, I was writing, cartooning, and writing became my things, and I continued with it. But once you master the craft, and it takes time, like anything, playing a guitar, playing basketball. But once you master it, you continue to work it, and it's that working it that keeps the tool sharp. So, I've been somebody that has tended to pretty much practice writing fiction. I won't say every single day, but I'm at it on a regular basis. And so I think I continue to improve and stay at anything long enough. You can get, some pretty decent chops.
So when it comes to publishing, especially a book like this, did you stay with the same publisher, or do you use different publishers?
Early on, I did have several major publishers in New York. That market has changed a lot. So the last few books I've gone with, excuse me, small presses. The most recent one is Loom Press. And I think they do a really good job. The production values are good. The books are carefully edited and prepared. But at this point in my life, I'm happy to publish, get things published, just to have them out there and to kind of reach an audience. So I don't think a whole lot about that side of it, but my experience has been that the markets have changed drastically over the past 30 years or so that I've been doing it. And I'm, I guess, just happy to still be doing it.
Now, when it comes to publishing, like you showed us a couple of your books, are you the one who also, not only the individual who writes this, probably sends off your manuscript to an editor, someone who'll look through it, but are you also involved with the cover art and the putting together of the book as well?
This most current book, yes. The earlier ones, the publishers had their own art departments, their own publicity departments. I'd occasionally give them a thought. I have a mystery private eye series set in the Merrimack Valley that was a prize-winning series. And so I gave them a few ideas early on, and I think they said, "Oh yeah, that's interesting, Dave." And then they went with their ideas, and I'm glad they did, because their work was much more creative than mine. I mean, they're designed by professional illustrators and people that know the game from the inside. So I'm, happy to offer my input, but I tend to stick to the writing part and let them do the production and the cover art and all of that. But I am very pleased with the cover of Beach Town, because it's a beautifully evocative painting that suggests what a town, and it could be on the South Shore, it could be on the North Shore, but has that particular feeling of mood and atmosphere and light that I think really suggests the stories in that book.
Now, is this the type of book, Beach Town Stories, where maybe you had a lot more material than you were able to put into this book? Did you have additional content that could end up being put into a second version of Beach Town Stories?
Yeah, spot on. I do. I had about 45 or 50 stories that could have qualified in this book. I chose 20 some. So I've got others. I'm thinking maybe that there could be a follow-up to this book. I'm thinking maybe it's going to be called Beach People or something like that. I think I'll keep the beach idea, but yeah, I've got plenty of other stories that deal with this time, this place, and I think going forward, that will be one of the projects I devote some time to, preparing a kind of a sequel, I guess you'd say.
Let's talk about, again, you've done 15 books. Does receiving copies of your newly published book have the same zest? Do you still get the same excitement when you're opening up a box of the first edition of your book?
It's funny you say that. I was just thinking that this week. I read that Stephen King, that prolific writing machine, has got a new book coming out. And I was wondering, does he still feel the same thrill with book number 65 or whatever it is that he did early on? I'd like to ask that question. It does change a little bit, but there is an excitement, because you sort of put your blood, sweat, and tears into something, then you see it finally come to fruition. And so it is exciting. I don't think, as B.B. King said it, maybe the thrill goes a little bit. It's still exciting, but it's more, it's known now. And so the experience can never quite be the way that first love was, I guess, first kiss, first fight, first car. So it's still sweet, though. It's still a nice feeling.
What would you say makes this book more so unique than the other 14 that you have done? What are some of the trials and tribulations that you had to endure? Because I think with every book, I think with every author, there are certain challenges that you meet, you have to overcome, and it helps you. You may plateau, you may have a little bit of a writer's block, and you may not be able to write for a few days. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Yeah, the experience is different every time. In fact, every day, some days when I sit down, maybe it's in the early morning. I tend to be early morning, but I'll write in the evening sometimes. And the words seem to just flow like wine in your mind. And you think, wow, this is great. I've got hold of the dragon's tail. Other days, you sit, there's nothing much there. You go check the news, you come back to it, nothing there. You check the Red Sox score, you come back to it. And it's just like sludge in the mind. And you sometimes think, well, it's going to get better, better, better every day. And it's not. It's a zigzagging ride. But I think that old saying that, writing's hard, like a lot of things that we do in life. So it's not the writing, but it's having written. After you've done it, it gives a kind of a glow to your day. And you think, okay, I like this, I can do it. And so there's a soul satisfaction in the act of it.
if you, as you, someone is watching this at home, and maybe they're an aspiring writer, maybe there's somebody who wants to work at the craft of writing, or maybe one day they want to write a book. If you were to give a little bit of advice to anybody who's watching right now, what would you give to them right now?
Well, I guess it goes without saying that one thing that we should do is read. In the same way, if you wanted to be a monster guitar player, you'd listen to music, you'd listen to players. So reading kind of goes without saying. But I think just having some faith in yourself. There's no loss. The only thing you're giving up is a little bit of your time. Um, and the cost minimal. It's the only thing that I can think of that there's no real initial outlay. You got a pen and paper, you've got your laptop. So all of us have stories, all of us have very rich lives. Somebody said, I think it might have been Hemingway, that by the time you're 30, maybe it was even younger, you've had you've experienced every human emotion, you've met all kinds of people, you've got enough material in those years to last you a lifetime. So we've all got stories. If there's an impulse to tell them, I think don't let anything stop you. Don't let anything stop you. Sit down, try it, have some fun.
Is there anything that we haven't touched upon in regards to you as an author, and of course your newest book, Beachtown Stories?
Um, no, I think that's, I mean, there's always more stuff to say, but that's kind of where I would go with that, is that um, if if somebody's interested in stories, and we've all got them, and you want to write them, write them. But reading is an important part of it. And so, yeah, I guess I would just leave it at that.
Probably something I should ask, and that this is, I think, important. Who would you say are some of your favorite authors?
Yeah, the list is long, but I go back to some of the classic masters. I love Joseph Conrad. Certainly Edgar Allan Poe has long been a favorite of mine. I love Rod Serling, the whole Twilight Zone thing. Joyce Carol Oates is a writer I like. A lot of the mystery writers. So it's a long list. I read a fair amount of poetry too. I think it keeps the eye sharp, keeps your ability to draw images sharp. So I'll try everything. There are South Shore writers whose work I love. But yeah, so I keep at it. I read not as much as I once did, but television's so seductive, But I do continue to read, and I've got plenty of books on my shelf that I'm still working on.
Excellent. Probably the most important question I should be asking you, and that is, if people want to buy a copy of your book, is there a brick and mortar that they can go to? Is this strictly online? How can someone get a copy of Beachtown Stories?
I know it's available over at Barnes and Noble in Hingham, at least on the South Shore. It is on Amazon, and it'll probably be it is, I think, since it's a new book, it should be at bookstores around the area, and it is readily available. I think if you were just to ask, it's widely distributed, and it would be available. There's a Kindle version as well.
If folks wanted to follow you and any projects you're doing, or maybe you might be out and about doing book signings, or how can they find out? Do you have a website or social media site that they can go to?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually just looking at that now. I don't keep these things in my memory, but I think the easiest thing is people could just contact me at daviddaniel67@gmail.com. Just one thing, daviddaniel67@gmail.com. And send me an email. I'll get back in touch.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time to discuss your newest book and the process, and about you, the author. I think it's important for folks to get to know the individuals who are crafting the books that we're reading and what goes into it, and helping the next wave, or the future writers out there in and around the South Shore and beyond.
Kevin, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
And we want to thank you at home for tuning into a program like this, Today's Author. If you know an author that we should be talking to, please send me an email, kevin@whca.tv. And until our next conversation with another great author, have a great day.